Hello everybody. This is going to be a continuation of the shape lesson which I started previously. Now the last video ended a bit abruptly, and but that's okay because it was running a bit long anyway at about 20 minutes. So when I taught you to end the line command, where the last video ended, I showed you how to use escape as one method, which works. But with my video recording software, I forgot that hitting escape will force my video to stop recording. So that's why it kind of ended where it did so abruptly. And that's the explanation. And I'm going to stop using escape to end commands going forward now. Alright, so to continue on, where we left off is we drew the outline of the shape drawing. We did not include any angles here, but we will include them in this lesson. So, looking at the download shape PDF, we have a length of 20 millimeters for that bevel. On this side of the drawing, we also have a height of 20. So that must tell us that that angle must be 45 degrees. If the width and the height are identical, that would force an angle of 45 degrees. But again, we don't have to input that information if we don't want to. So if you don't know that it's 45 degrees, and if I didn't tell you, it wouldn't have made a difference. So let's continue on. We're going to use a modify tool now. So line was found in the draw tools. We're going to be using a command in modify. Now, when you float your cursor here and you see fillet, if we move slightly to the right, we see a drop down arrow. We can select this and we're going to select chamfer. As you can see the preview there, this is what we want to do to the drawing. We want to give it a beveled edge, so we're going to select chamfer. Now, this is going to be a little different. Now, it automatically turns the crosshairs into a small white square and it says select first line, or. Now, let's take a look down at the command line where there's more options. It says select first line, or, and it says undo, polyline, distance, angle, and so on. So there's a couple of ways that we can input the information. We're going to select distance first in this example. So I can pick distance, and then it says specify the first chamfer distance. Well, it wants to know either the width or the height, but they're both the same, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to type in 20. And then after we type 20, we're going to hit enter, and it says it asks for you to specify the second chamfer distance. Well, again, those numbers are identical. We've done the width. Now let's input the height. 20. Enter. All right, so once we've done those two things, we're ready to actually create the chamfers. So I can select this line here, or this one, doesn't matter which order, anywhere. So pick and pick. And it's going to create that chamfer for me exactly the way I need it. Now, because I have to do this twice, let's say I don't want to go through that exercise again of inputting all the numbers. AutoCAD will remember the last command you inputted with the same values. So all I have to do to quickly repeat the process on this side is to right-click my mouse and left-click repeat chamfer. And then just come over and select the two lines on the opposite side. And when you complete the chamfer command, it's going to automatically exit you from the command. So you don't have to actually end the command yourself. Once you pick the two lines and they've created the chamfer, AutoCAD goes back to its basic crosshair view. And one way to tell if you're in a command or not is look down at the command line. If you read here, type a command in dim text, that means you're not in any active AutoCAD commands. So just a little tip in case you're not sure. And if you're in a command and you don't want to be in a command, just hit the escape key and that will bring you back to where we are right now. All right, so moving on. We've got the outline perfectly done as per what we're seeing here. The next thing we need to do is add the circles here. And they have a diameter of 40. How do I know this is a diameter? Because to the left of the value of the dimension, there's a circle with a line struck through it. So that means the distance from here to here, or from here to here, right? The length of the circle. If it said R here, which would mean radius, that would only mean from here to here. It would be halfway. But diameter always represents the full travel from one side of the circle to the other. So we assume that it's the same on this side. It's 40 millimeters, and the distance from the corner, the bottom left corner where the origin is, where we began, is 30 millimeters from there vertically and 30 millimeters horizontally. All right, so let's get started. Before I can put those circles on there, I need to actually reference their position. Meaning I have to be able to snap the circle to some line geometry that I don't have. So this is a new modify command. It's found in the modify tools, and it's in the bottom right here, and it's called offset. Creates concentric circles, parallel lines, and parallel curves. So that's left click offset. It asks specify offset distance. So before you can click anything, AutoCAD needs to know, okay, how much do you want to offset by? Well, it's going to be 30, as in 30 millimeters. We've just determined that by looking at the PDF sheet, and we're going to hit enter. And that's going to initiate the offset command. So when you see your cursor or your crosshairs look like a little white square, that means you're ready to start picking lines. This offset's going to be identical everywhere, so we only need to do this one time. So we're going to pick this line here, and we click into the direction we want the offset to go. We want this to go on the inside of the shape, so I'm going to click anywhere to the right. It doesn't matter where I click because it's only going to copy the line 30 millimeters. That's basically what's happening. It's offsetting the line, but it's almost like you could think of it as it's copying it as well, because it's not actually moving this one. Then we're going to take this line and click to the left. Perfect. Then we're going to pick this line and we're going to click above. Now, this command will not automatically exit. So we've learned to hit escape. Now what we can do is just hit the enter key on the keyboard, and that will also end the command. So there's two ways for you to escape a command. Hit escape key or hit the enter key. And there's more ways to do it as well, which I'll reveal more and more as we go, as to not overwhelm you all at one time. All right, so remember we can zoom in with our mouse, right? I can wheel the mouse wheel forward to zoom in and backwards to zoom out. So I want to zoom in on this, get a kind of a good look at it. We're going to be adding our circles now to the drawing. So you guessed it, circle is in draw tools. But don't pick this circle here. You see what it says here? If I flash my cursor over it, it says center radius. Creates a circle using a center point and a radius. So we don't want that because we know that we want a diameter. So if I hit the drop down arrow, I can select center diameter from the list. And that shows from one side of the circle all the way to the other side. That's what I want. So I'm going to left click center diameter. And AutoCAD asks, it says specify center point for circle. It also says the same thing in the command line. It just gives more detail in the command line. So all I need to do is just run my cursor to here, and this X will pop up automatically without clicking, right? I just have to move my mouse in, and that X shows up. It says intersection. So this is a new object snap. So we've learned about endpoint snap. We can snap any line perfectly to the end of an existing line, and if I want to create a circle in the exact intersection of these two lines, when I see the X, it's going to do it. So I'm going to left click, and now I can pull the circle big and small. Now, I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to try to line these numbers up in the preview. I'm just going to type in 40 for 40 millimeters and hit enter. And that's going to draw that circle 40 millimeters. Come over to this side. Let's do it again. Pick center diameter circle. This snap is also acceptable. This is perpendicular. So either one would be good. Click. And we're going to type 40. Enter. All right, and we have our circles in place. So the whole part now is actually drawn. If we take a look here, here we have it. Now, it doesn't look perfectly the same. You see these lines here that are intermittently dashed every so often, and they appear lighter in contrast than the shape itself, because the shape is what's actually being made in a shop, right? Maybe it's being cut out on some sort of a computerized cutting machine, like a CNC mill. These holes are going to be drilled out with a drill of some kind. So anything that is to be manufactured or created is shown in the darkest line contrast. These lines here are called center lines, and they are lighter in contrast, and they're not actually a part of what's being created. This is a drawing standard or a drafting standard for mechanical drawings. So a center line has to be added to any circles on a drawing, and they should be added to identify features that can be lined up, and also identify symmetrical features on a drawing. All right. And they also stick out a bit, right? It doesn't say on this drawing how far they stick out, but I'm going to tell you they should stick out 6 millimeters. And the reason for this is normally in an English drawing or imperial drawing, which is inches, a center line would extend 1/4 of an inch. And if you convert 1/4 of an inch to metric units in millimeters, it works out to be 6.35 millimeters. So what we do is we just round it down. We just round it to 6 to make it easier. So we're just going to round it down, get rid of the decimal. But we're going to use the lines that we have already from the offset process. We're not going to delete them and re-add them, right? We're just going to use what we have. So what we can do first is we can turn these lines into center lines. It's a very simple process. When I'm not in a command, and as you see here, type a command, I can just click this line here and click this line and left click this line, right? I left clicked all these lines once, and they kind of highlight. They look a little blue, and they show these blue nodes. That's what they call these. They appear, also referred to as grips. And what I can do is just grab the line at the grip, and I can bring it down and snap it to the quadrant of the circle. And I can do the same thing with this one to the quadrant, from here to the quadrant, and so on. All right, once I've done that, I can go up to this toolbar here. This is my layers tool, and I can, where it says 0 layer, I can hit this drop down and I can set this for center line. And look what that does, right? It automatically turns those lines into center lines. They're still selected with the nodes, but you can see that it has the dash added now every so often. So that's something automatic. This is something that I've set up ahead of time for you in the border that you downloaded, right? So that's why it's very important to download these borders from the hub, these templates, I should say, because they are programmed to make your life easier when you complete these exercises. All right, so now that we've snapped the edges of these lines to the quadrants of these circles, now we're ready to extend them 6 millimeters. So we're going to select this line here. I'm still not in an active command, right? Type a command here. That means I'm not in a command. So I'm just going to grab the node. I'm going to pull the line in the direction I want to go and type 6. Enter. And that is going to grip that line 6 millimeters outward. We're going to do the same thing with here. 6. Now, here's a tip as well. If you want to pan the drawing, meaning not zoom in and out, but move it around your screen, hold your wheel mouse in, and you can pan like this, right? So you can put some things into better view if you'd like, and then just let go when you don't want to pan anymore. Grab this node, pull 6. Let's pan to this side. 6. 6, and the last one. Okay, great. So now that is done. You can hit escape to end that command, or not end the command, but to deselect the grips. And now that looks like it should, right? We can compare it to this one. Now the dashes here don't appear as often as the ones that I've created, but that doesn't matter. So we're just going to leave that the way it is. And we have something looking very, very nice. We have a couple of more things to do before this drawing can be considered complete. And that is to add the dimensions, which are the manufacturing details, right? So the person in the shop receives this drawing. They don't know what size to make this because there's no dimensions on it. But if we look here, this one includes dimensions. So we're going to be copying the position of these dimensions exactly as we see here. But the question is, how far do they go? Right? We don't know how far they are from the part. Well, that's what we're going to talk about next. So we're going to create some dimensions. The first stack of dimensions, the arrows all have to line up with one another. So one can't be higher or lower than the other, and they all have to be a certain distance away. The second stack or more is a little less than the first. Now the reason for this is we leave a little bit more distance in the first set closest to the part so we don't accidentally crowd the part, right? We want to leave a little bit of breathing room. So the rule of thumb is 12 millimeters for the first set. So let me show you how to run some dimensions. So we're going to go up to our annotation tool and we're going to select this one called linear. It's right in the open here. All our commands have been pretty open in the ribbon. We're going to hit linear, and I'm going to start with this dimension. So I'm going to click the endpoint and this endpoint, and that's going to allow me to pull the dimension up and off the part. Now, the best way to ensure that you get your 12 millimeters is I would snap the dimension right in line with the part like this first. This doesn't have to be done every time, but I'm going to show you why this makes sense. So once I've run that one, snapped it right in line with the part, I'm going to grab it at the value and use a grip. So touch the left click the node, pull up, and type in 12. And that is going to create the dimension, not create it, but move it 12 millimeters. I'm going to prove it to you that it's 12 millimeters. So this is something here, this is under utilities. If we hit this drop down and I hit measure, I can measure from the arrow to the bottom of the part and it shows 12 millimeters. So that is correct. Now that I've got one done, I don't need to do that for every single dimension. I can just do this. So I can grab my linear dimension, snap this endpoint and this endpoint, and then just endpoint snap it in line with the 30, and I know it's going to be the perfect height. Same thing here. Linear dimension. Click this endpoint and this endpoint and snap that one right in line with the 30, and we have that first stack finished. Right? Looks just like this. Now, the 180 is going to be a bit different. So this one has to be 10 millimeters from the previous set because it's going to be one level higher. So this is the way I would accomplish this. Another linear dimension, snap from this endpoint to this endpoint, and snap it right in line with the first stack, like that. Then you can select that dimension. So pick it over here so you don't accidentally select anything from the first set, and then pick the node, pull the direction you want to go, which is up, and key in 10 millimeters. And that is going to move that dimension up 10 for you. So we'll just double check that. 10 millimeters. Perfect. Okay, moving on. We also have to include the 30 dimension and the 30 dimension here as shown. So that's another linear dimension. Select it. You're going to pick the endpoint of this horizontal center line, and you're going to pick the bottom left-hand corner of the part. We're going to snap this right in line like I showed you earlier. Select it, pick it at the node, pull the direction you want to go, key in 12 millimeters. That's going to give you your 12 millimeters. Let's do this again. Linear. Endpoint. Endpoint. Snap in line with the part. Select the node. Come down 12 millimeters. We also have some dimensions on this side we have to do. We have to do the 20, the 40, and the 120. So the 20's got to be 12 millimeters away. The 40 is 10 millimeters from the 20. And the 120 is 10 millimeters from the 40. So there's a lot of repetition here, which is great, right? Gives you some time to practice some new things. Let's pick linear dimension. Select this endpoint and this endpoint. Snap in line with the part. Grip it 12 millimeters. Linear dimension again. Select this endpoint and this endpoint. This one we're going to have these vertical dimensions. We have to set the distance every time. There's nothing to reference for it. So now that the 40 is in line with the 20, we'll pick the 40 dimension here where we don't accidentally select the 20. We'll select the grip with a left click and pull it to the right and key in 10 millimeters, enter. There's one more to do on this side. So we're going from here to the bottom end point. Snap in line with the 40. And again, 10 millimeters. Right? If I actually have to do another set, it would be 10 millimeters as well. The only one that's furthest is the 12 millimeters. That's the first stack, right? If I had a second, third, fourth, fifth, I would continue just to go in increments of 10 millimeters after my first set. All right, so that 120 is still selected. I'll leave it selected, and I'll also select these other dimensions. And I'm going to be moving them to the dimensions layer. So I'm going to go back to my layers drop down and select the dimensions from the list. And there I have it. So they're all changed. And these will appear lighter. If I was to print this off on a printer, even if my printer wasn't color, it's okay, because the dimensions and the center lines are going to appear lighter in contrast to the actual part. The same way we see it here. The dimensions should not be as dark. That's why we have layers in drawings. We don't want to confuse manufacturing details with what needs to be actually constructed or built or cut out. I'm missing one dimension still. I'm missing this 40 dimension. So that one has to be done in a little bit of a different way. So let's take care of that. Let's go back to the drawing. Go back up to annotation. Next to linear dimension, hit the drop down arrow and select diameter. This will create a diameter dimension. We'll pick the circle anywhere around here. And that's going to create the 40 dimension. I'm just panning over and I'm zooming in. Now I can't actually snap this one away as accurately. Linear dimensions can be snapped very accurately. This is called an ordinate dimension, right? We're dimensioning a curve, and I can't do that exactly. I can't do that like I'm doing with the linear dimension. So this one's just going to be eyeballed up. I'm just going to kind of make it eyeballed as best as I can by eye, and make sure the 40 is right in line with the 30, and I'll just drop it right there. That's as close as I think I can get it. And then this dimension will be selected and placed on the dimensions layer. You're going to notice the way I snapped these dimensions. Again, they appear the same as on the PDF copy. The 40, for example, which is the height of that slot, is dimensioned from the very top, and it has an extension line that travels to the bottom of the slot. Right? That's very important, because if you were to snap it like this, and I'm actually going to delete this dimension. I'm going to redo it and do it incorrectly. If I pick linear dimension and I select the top here like I've done, and I pick somewhere around here, I'll just snap that in line, come out 10 millimeters, throw this on the dimension layer. This is incorrect because this extension line has to actually travel to the feature that it's connected to. So if I zoom in on this, you'll see there's like a little space here and a little dot. So I can select that and I can drag that grip over to here, and now that's correct. you're going to notice when you run these dimensions that there's a gap, right? That gap is 2 millimeters, and it is programmed by me because dimension extension lines should never actually touch the part. There should always be a gap, and that gap happens automatically when you create these dimensions. So if you take a notice of that, it's perfectly normal, and it's the correct standard to do these things. And of course, you do see the same gap on this drawing as well. So another example is this 80. The way I snapped it, I'm going to redo this dimension incorrectly. Someone might have done it like this, where they snapped the endpoints below and pulled it up to here and snapped it to the 30. It looks good. Put the dimension layer on. Looks good. What's the problem? The gap is in here because the extension line overwrites the outline of the part, the slot. This is incorrect. The extension line shouldn't travel through the feature it's trying to detail. So to fix this, if you've done this, you can select the 80, use a grip, and just pull the end point of the extension line to the top, just like this. And now that is completely correct. One final thing to do to this drawing before we call it complete is to fill in the title block. The title block comes pre-set up with these X's, right? This indicates what has to be edited. So I can double click on the X, and this allows me just to do a simple text edit. So I can, with the cursor of my mouse, I can backspace the X, and I can type shape. Now you want to make sure you're typing this in all capitals, because lowercase lettering is incorrect. You're always screaming when you're adding text to a drawing. So once you've typed shape, you can left click out, and it will complete that edit for you. And I can come over here. I'm going to add my name because I drew this, but you're going to be adding your name for your drawing. So you double click the X, and then backspace. So you're going to type your first initial in your name, a period, a space, and then your last name. Now, you might have a very large last name and it might not fit. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in class if you're having that issue. So we'll just move on. Date. It's going to be month. Second month, February, backslash, and today is the 8th day, and this is the 21st year. Click out. So it goes month, day, year, like this, not day, month, year. Scale. Scale is a ratio of 1 to 1. Now, what does that mean? What does scale mean? Well, that means that if I was to print this on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper on my printer, and I actually put a ruler on this and measured the length of these lines, I would actually measure 80 millimeters between here and here. I would measure 180 millimeters from one side to the other. That means when I print the drawing, it's going to be the same, it's going to measure the same values as what I've drawn. Let's say I selected a scale of 1 to 2 for my printing, and then if I was to put a ruler on here, everything will be cut in half, right? I would actually measure from here to here 40, or I would measure from here to here 15, right? Everything would be everything would be looking as it should, because everything would be scaled down. It would still look the same as this, but it would be smaller. So if I was to choose a scale of 2:1, everything would be twice as large when I print it, right? This would be 160. This would be 60 millimeters and so on. So that is how scale works. All the scale of these drawings will be 1:1 because they all print off nicely on a small printer. And you don't need to print them off, but just an explanation of why scale is important on a drawing. And then lastly, drawing number. All drawings need a number. So we're going to use the last 3 digits of our course code because this is a TIJ1O1. So we're going to use 101. That's O is in open, right? 1 means grade 9. O means open, and 1 means single credit, right? A lot of students will want to put a 0 there, but it's actually an O. Capital O. Hyphen. Now we'll use a 0. A 0 looks a little different, and we'll use a 1 because this is our first drawing. 101-01. And we'll click out, and that's it. The one last thing I might just do is I might just center this 1:1 scale. I might just select it. And what I can do is I can move it to the side a bit. There's a command here in Modify called Move. It looks like little arrows. Select it. It says Specify Base Point, so I can just pick this and I can move it a little more to the right. I'm not inputting a value. I'm just eyeballing this, right, to look a little more centered. And that's it. So nothing fancy with this. Just make sure your ortho is turned on and you'll be good. And that is the shape drawing completely finished. So at this point, you would hit your save button. And now we can talk about getting them ready for hand-in at another time. So I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope the explanations were very well detailed. And I would like you to try to draw the shape drawing and follow the instructions in these videos, as well as reference the shape drawing on your iPad. Don't just copy the video, right? You actually have to, watch the video and understand what you're doing. So until next time, take care, and I will talk to you soon.